started in 2009, and this was the sole reason we got this facility initially, after having clinical services in different locations here in Anchorage, where we primarily did medical exams, drug and alcohol testing. And when we first got into Fit for Duty, we were going down that path with a very specific client who wanted us to start offering it. It was starting to grow as a occupational service throughout the nation, and certainly people were starting to focus in on how could they be more proactive on the early stages of hiring to make sure that the individuals that were going to the work site, doing light duty, medium duty, heavy duty activities, were screened to do the minimum functional essential needs. And you'll hear that time and time again about the minimum functional essential needs that we test to. Now, I will say, from the days that we first got started back in 2009, 2010, I think we did maybe 300 tests. Last year we did over 3,000 tests. So every year, companies in all industries are starting to see the benefits of trying to be proactive on the front end. And I can speak from very specific examples that, you know, we do health and wellness. We'll go do biometric screenings and we'll do all this kind of stuff. And when you talk health and wellness with the client, it's very much about soft savings. With Fit for Duty testing, it's very much the opposite. It's very quantifiable. And Rick and the team that he has puts it in a return on investment. And I'll just continue by saying, in all the testing that we do, you as employers, you probably have employers that go through pre-employment testing, drug and alcohol testing, all these different types of tests. Drug and alcohol nationwide, it's no different at Beacon. You know, we did 80,000 drug and alcohol tests last year, maybe about 5% positive rate. If you're positive on the alcohol test, that's kind of a stupidity test too when it comes to pre-employment. But certainly on the medical exams, you're looking at maybe around 3%. And usually what medical exams are catching is gross health issues that might warrant somebody from working in a remote location. Certainly here in Alaska, you're looking at their job description, where they're working. Fit for Duty testing throughout the last 6 years has ranged from about 15 to 18% in terms of screening. So you're really, you know, people go through a medical exam, go through a drug test, and you go this Fit for Duty, and you're really making sure that you're getting the right applicant for the job. And it's because of all the work that goes into making sure that what you're testing to is very specific to the jobs they're going to be doing out in the field. Rick's going to talk about all this. And so I'm going to introduce him and be quiet, but I do want to introduce Lori Michello in the back. She is the lead Fit for Duty. She is our supervisor and lead for the Fit for Duty and ergonomics here at Beacon. She is a certified behavioral ergonomist. She's a physical therapist. She leads a team of about 6 physical therapists that support our Fit for Duty program here at Beacon. We feel very proud to have her as part of the Beacon team. She's been on site pretty much around this entire state doing job validations, which is part of the process that you go through before you get to the testing protocols, before you get to the testing. This isn't something that we just say, hey, come on over, we're going to start putting your people through. Rick will talk about that process, because what we do to ensure the legality of what you're doing in this facility is so critical for the employer. And it's really why Beacon was so happy and proud. We were going down one path with the client, and I met Rick and I said, wow, right away, I was like, it's night and day. I mean, first of all, we hit it off as friends, but really his expertise, his knowledge, his business, which has got an affiliate network nationwide, really coincides with what we try to do for our employers who we're scheduling exams and drug and alcohol testing throughout the country. Being able to tap into that national network has just been a great partnership for 6 years. So Rick has got so many credentials and such a large bio that I don't even want to pretend to try to say it all to you. So I'm just going to introduce Dr. Bunch and welcome him to Alaska. He's up from home in Louisiana, so he's been here and he's heard everything great about Alaska. Tries to throw in things about Louisiana. It doesn't go very far. So without any further ado, please welcome Rick.
Okay, I tell you what, Anchorage is my second home, and I want to reiterate the relationship I've had with Beacon. It's been extraordinary. Like I said, Mark and I hit it off, and their philosophies and their goals, the excellent, matched ours extremely well. And Lori Michello is our Vice President of Alaskan Operations. Lori, will you come up here just for a second to make sure everybody gets a good view, because you're definitely a lot better looking than I am. And,
Amen.
So Lori's been instrumental. She is extremely knowledgeable on physical demand validations and validate the job descriptions and helping us construct a customized evaluation for each one of your job titles that is going to specifically address all the criteria. Right? You want to say anything real quick? Right.
I think that here in Alaska, I've been working with Rick Bunch for over 10 years, by 12 years, and the difference with the populace in Alaska, or more specifically the working population here, is that we have different issues than they do in the lower 48, and Rick and his staff can certainly attest to seeing the differences that come through as quality assurance department when they see the Alaskans come through versus the lower 48. And to expand a little bit on what Mark was saying about our, we call it unable, or the failure rate for fitness for duty is much higher in this state because we're looking at several different factors here that may not be present in the lower 48. For example, we have we have a lot of seasonal workers here, big seasonal changes. We have Alaska's in the top third of obesity for the populace as a whole. The third thing is that we have the prevalence of SAD. We have seasonal affective disorder. And the other thing that we have is that when you superimpose all these risk factors on top of a worker who's going to be in an Arctic climate, that in itself is a cardiac stressor. So you see how the risk factors in Alaska start surmounting, and if somebody is borderline, this will tip them over. So I have found this to be a really excellent screening tool, and I work very closely with companies to try and be a team with them when we come to people who might be a little bit of an issue, how we can work to accommodate them versus not. So no further ado, I'm going to give it to Rick, but I just wanted to give my sense as the examiner and the administrator of the program here.
Thank you, Laura. Now, she looks so sweet and beautiful, but she's a liar. She told me she was going to take me hiking yesterday, day before yesterday when I first got here, and that was going to be old level. And I only after about three miles into going to Rabbit Lake, we take a deviation up this tremendous mountain like Mount Everest. And I was dying when I got up there, so I don't trust her anymore with hiking. No, but I had a beautiful time, and yesterday we did the bird-to-gird bicycling thing, which was super nice. And I just love it here. It's so gorgeous. Anyway, I know you knew all that. But let me first say my background is I attended West Point Military Academy in my beginning of my years after I graduated from high school. Served in the Army Reserve for 5 years after that. And then went to LSU Medical Center to get my degree in physical therapy, went on back to medical school to get my doctorate degree in neurophysiology and human anatomy. While I was at LSU Medical Center, they asked me to stay as a professor. It was in 1990 when this thing called the Americans with Disabilities Act was being tossed around and became law. And I saw the writing on the wall. I said, we can't do the standard x-ray anymore. I should say you got a class 4 back and not hire you. That's becoming illegal. And so when I start reading the language of Title I of the ADA, it talks about function. We have to get everybody the right, whether they have a disability or not, the right to demonstrate their abilities to do the job with or without accommodations. So I said, this is huge because, first of all, too many companies are hiring people blindly. And when they do that, you don't know what happens. You get injured. I mean, it's amazing that every companies do this because I do evaluations. Lori's done it. She just did one this morning where she found a person with a significant medical issue. I found one guy who had a rotator cuff problem, and he passed the standard medical without a problem. And the first time he gets to work, as you know, and does a shoulder level lift, he's going to tear it even more, and then you're going to buy it. So the question is, what do we do fit for duty testing for? It becomes a defensive hiring tool in the sense, now EEOC doesn't like me to use the word defensive, but it truly is. It's defensive not only for you as the employer, it's defensive for the person. Because I look at people trying to get work, that could be my brother, my sister, my daughter, my son. I would not want them injured on the job, and I don't think employer should be an insurance company and buy every injury that walks into the door. I think we have an obligation, general duty clause, we have an obligation to provide the worker with a safe workplace, but to me, the employee, the potential employee has an obligation to provide you with at least a intact, safe body to do the job. At least like Mark said so eloquently, the minimum essential duties to do the job safely. So I wanted to tell you how this is designed and give you a global perspective on this. We've done over 600,000 tests to date. I have over 300 and something industry clients testing nationally. It's here in Alaska, as far south as Guam. We do all the national testing for Chevron. We do all the national testing for Schlumberger and many other big companies. And I've had the privilege, when Lori introduced me to Mark Highland in Beacon, Mark opened a lot of doors for me for industries here in Alaska. And Mark, about how many clients we have doing our testing now, would you estimate? Here in Alaska.
Lower, I'm guessing 60?
So I was going to say about 62.
Yeah, and including companies like our road icebreakers, I call them, you know, Carlisle and all these companies. The results are actually extremely effective the way we do it, because there are competitors that will just do a functional test and throw people through like they're in an army barracks and say touch your toes and lift this, lift that. But you're going to see the design here, how that is inefficient in and of itself. You have to do more than that to pick up these problems that people have. You can get by on a functional test, you miss things. And I'll show you how you can miss things on a physical and you pick it up on a functional. So the combination of the two becomes very, very important. And so, but out of 600,000 and something, none of my clients, you know, I'm not on plastic, none of my clients following our policy and procedures have ever had a lawsuit or lost an EEOC claim. We've had some EEOC investigations, and they found that our process was by the book, both legally and procedurally. I mean, one of my biggest clients, Schlumberger, was saying, we want to do this, but our lawyers keep saying, no, you can't. And that went on for 2 years. And I said, do you mind if I just talk to your lawyers? And I was telling Wes this. I finally got a chance to have a face-to-face with the lawyers, and it took less than 30 minutes. They go, yeah, we could do this. Oh, dang, well, you kept waiting for 2 years to tell me that. So anyway, let me get on with this, and I want to answer give you time for a lot of Q&A. This is my, do we need to dim the lights at all here, Lori, do you think?
I could certainly do that.
Okay. This is the Quality Assurance Office for WorkSaver in Houma, Louisiana, which is about 50 miles southwest of New Orleans. It's a big oil town, and actually where I was raised. And our other facility, well, in that facility, we're the only organization, and I think that's one thing that Mark liked about us, where we have a dedicated group of registered and licensed nurses that evaluate every single examination done. Like the examination Lori did this morning, and she's going to send that report to this office here, and they're going to review it to make sure that Lori didn't miss anything, and that if Lori's got questions, she can be on the phone with us in the New York section. And we just finished a big, huge software program that cost us over $250,000 that's going to make this communication instantaneous while collecting data for our clients. Every one of our industrial clients gets a detailed statistical report at the end of the year telling them how many people failed, how many people passed, why there were failures, making sure there's no disparate discrimination, that we don't have a disparate number of, say, females failing compared to males. Now you can't, by the way, this might sound weird, you can have disparate results. You can have that 70% of the females fail, or 70% of people over 60 fail, if, and only if, the criteria is content valid. That means that the pass-fail really do reflect the job requirements. Because there are fundamental differences between an older person at a certain age and for a female versus a male. That being said, when we go through our PDVs, our physical man validations, we try to make sure the employer eliminates any unnecessary job demands that are burdensome, that shouldn't be, that can be easily remedied, no cost, low cost. Because if you don't do that, somebody else is going to do it. You know what I mean? And they'll hold it against you. So every nurse goes through every page of that evaluation. We're not making any exceptions, and we collect the data on it, and we make sure that everybody in the country who's doing our testing process called the WorkSaver test, and here in WEF it's the Beacon WorkSaver test, is doing this test correctly. This is the other facility in New Orleans. If you ever want to come down to New Orleans, we'll take care of any cholesterol deficiency down in OS. We'll make sure we feed you right. But this is a ergonomics training center as well as our fitness for duty training center, educational center. And we bring people in from companies who want to learn more about our process and everything, and ergonomics and all these other issues. WorkSaver services that we do with Beacon and nationally is we do EEOC and ADA compliant fit for duty testing. We do the legal foundation for that test, how we design that test for each one of your jobs, is the physical demand validation, which we abbreviate PDB. And then we create what we call functional job descriptions. They may be different from job descriptions you're accustomed to, which are mainly described administratively, the responsibilities of the worker. We're actually describing the functional requirements of the job. For each, not only that you have to lift, for example, lifting so often referred to, how much you have to lift, how frequently you have to lift it, from where to where, from floor to knuckle, from floor to waist, from floor to shoulder, all these parameters that, because I have to translate this into the evaluation protocol. And that, so because when you get from, say, a floor to knuckle lift, women are comparable to men, because their leg strength is very comparable to men. When you get to waist level and you start recruiting the upper arms and shoulder level, then you see a difference on average. Now, I've seen women, some women stronger than men, a lot of men that I know, but you got to go with statistical average. Statistically, women are 50% as strong as men in the upper body. So there is a difference physically that we have to recognize, And so when somebody tells me, well, we got to lift 150 pounds to overhead, my antennas go up. I go, really? Really? Let's look at this because if I test that, I'm going to eliminate 70% of the men and 100% of the women. And so we work to make sure that some employers just need to be given a reality check on here's what's essential and here's not. And we can't test for marginal stuff that may be done because the worker decides, I'm going to lift that 120-pound water pump by myself, even though I can easily have somebody else help me do it. That is an administrative issue, not a functional fit for duty issue. So we do those type of things, because whenever you have a gap between what the employee's capacities are and the job capacity, that's when you get the musculoskeletal injuries. Our tests are designed to identify neurological problems, cardiovascular problems, and musculoskeletal problems. And of course, in the field of strength and flexibility and range of motion, that falls under the big domain of musculoskeletal. But we do pick up neurological problems and all these kind of things as well. And I'll give you a few examples of that. We have publications to support everything I'm saying that are not published by us, but published by our clients. Chevron published a paper at the SPE conference. I love these SPE conferences because they're always in exotic places, like this was in Paris. And we co-author it with them, but they got an 8-to-1 return on investment. For every every $1 they spend on our program, they got a return on investment of $8. Schlumberger got a 1-to-13 ratio. So it pays for itself. If we identify one back problem, you're saving minimally, if it's a very simple back problem with easy resolution, $17,500. But if it's a little bit complicated, a little bit more, you're looking at $40,000, $50,000. If you got a surgery, you're looking at $120,000 to $200,000. If you got a metal vacuum off the North Slope, add another $100,000. So it saves our company literally hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. And we do a return on investment report that tells you the estimate of the money your company has saved by the catches we make. These catches might just not be a failure. This might be, I find this gentleman has a cardiac arrhythmia, and we stop the test, have him go see his medical doctor. They find out he's got this kind of heart problem that can be corrected by medicine. They give him that medicine, he comes back and applies and gets hired. That's a catch. Because otherwise, if we didn't catch that, he could have went on and had a heart attack or stroke. We had a guy that applied for Schlumberger. This is interesting. He had gone through a medical exam that the medical doctor did, with no problem. In fact, a medical doctor was a good friend of mine. He said, Rick, I'm sending this guy over for your functional test. You don't even have to do the physical, in my opinion. He's going to go through that like hot knife through butter. But he came in, he looked like he could play for the New Orleans Saints. He went through my physical assessment like a hot knife through butter. But then, when we got him into our facility like this, and we had him doing the job-specific functional testing, this is what happened. He started lifting and carrying, and his heart rate, which was at rest, was a nice steady beat. Well, what you expect when you're doing physical exertion is it goes faster, right? But steady. His was going like, and I said, oh, okay. I'm not a cardiologist, but I know that could either be a benign dysrhythmia or it could be something bad. So I said, partner, we got to stop the test. We give you a form to sign that you've been notified of what we found, and you go to the emergency room or to your medical doctor, but do it today. I want to scare you, but this is something you should be aware of. You're only 32 years old. We got to make sure that this is nothing serious. I said, well, it could be benign. The guy gets out of our clinic, and we find this all after the fact from his wife, his widow, as I'm getting ready to tell you. She tells me when he got out of the clinic, he said, the heck with this. I'm going somewhere where they don't do this type of testing. So he applied for Halliburton, who at that time wasn't doing our testing program. He gets hired by Halliburton, 2 weeks later has a major MI and dies. And the coroner was doing some investigation, found out we were the last place to do a medical exam on him. That's how we found out all about this. And that's how, unfortunately, we got the Halliburton contract, because they found out they were hiring all our failures. And this was a deadly failure. So these things, listen, here's a perfect example where a person can go through a medical exam easily, but when they get into functional exertion, things change. So very important to understand that part. Now, we make sure our tests are safe. No one's ever got hurt in our testing process. We make sure our test is reliable. That means if I do the test and Lori follows me, she does the same test, she gets the same results. And it's valid, and it represents what the job requires. Now the question is, how do you stay legally compliant with all this mess here? You got to deal with disability, you got to deal with older employees, the Age Discrimination and Employment Act. You got to deal with not discriminating against females in the Title VII of the Civil Service Act. You got to deal with pregnancy, now protected, and you got to deal with obesity, protected. Well, I just want you to say, don't worry about all that when it comes to fit for duty testing, if your fit for duty testing is designed correctly. Because we have every policy and procedure for all these conditions built into our examination process. You, as the employer, won't even have to worry about it. And we can answer any specific questions about that. But remember this, if you think about what we're looking at the safety of that individual. Think safety of that individual. That we don't want that person to create direct threat of harm to himself, herself, or to another worker. And the test is designed to do that. As long as you stick with that, you're going to have a solid, valid test that's going to address all these concerns. Our pregnancy issue, we don't test women during pregnancy with the stressful part of the test. We don't do the lifting, pushing, pulling test. We do everything else, but we don't do the stressful test. Why? During the first trimester, she has a miscarriage, guess who's going to be sued? And during the second, third trimester, there's an anthropometric change, which means that the area of the abdomen gets bigger, which is going to change the mechanics of lifting. If you know anything about the Nye-Auschwitz equation, that means your horizontal distance to reach is going to increase, your intradiscal pressure is going to go sky high. On top of that, you've got hormonal changes, where she's going to have increased elasticity in pelvis. Why do we want to subject? And listen, we could say she may have eclampsia, hypertension during pregnancy. She may have a previous condition. We don't know. It may not be picked up by a medical doctor. I don't want to find out. The hard way. We consider the person temporarily disabled from certain components of work, and we ask the employer to regard that person as temporarily disabled. Let them go through the exam, make sure they don't have a rotator cuff problem or something that's got to be resolved, and then put them on light duty while they're at work. And after they have the baby, it's just temporary. You have to have the baby and completely recover from that. Then run them back through our the stressful test in our fit for duty to see if you can remove the restriction. It's accommodating. You don't want to hurt somebody, bottom line, you certainly don't want to hurt a fetus. And these are all things that play. So we design all these things. We got a policy procedure we give all our clients. We give it to HR. HR can take that and make it fit their own or just adopt it like it is. And one of the reasons, well, I'm not a lawyer, but I have hired lawyers. One of my lawyers is Topper Thompson. He's co-writing a book with me. I've been contracted by a company called Wiley & Sons. It's an international medical publication company. I'm writing the book Unfit for Duty, and I have my retained attorney, Topper Thompson, who's an ex-OSHA judge, who dealt with all this stuff. And he's written a lot of my policies and procedures. So we feel very confident that we've got all these things. Genetics, you know about GINA, the Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act. You can't ask questions about a person's family history. You can't get medical information from any type of genetic testing. And so we make sure we don't do that during our examination process. Yes?
I had a question about the obesity. How would you determine if someone's obese? Just by using the body mass index?
Yeah, we can do a body mass index, but it doesn't matter.
Well, even
Because-
that one, I did one for my class in the presentation last semester, and I was like 1 foot away from being obese.
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't like BMIs because you can have a heavy bone structure and all that. There's definitions for obesity, but we don't have, in fit for duty testing, we don't have to define obesity. We don't even want to identify it. We're looking at function. We're looking at the ability to go through a manhole cover, a hatchway. We're looking at does the person weight exceed the ladder weight limitation or the fall gear. These are all things we address. And I won't cover that, but good question. And so to design the Beacon Work Saver Fit for Duty test, we do the physical man validation. I won't belabor the point, but we use all kinds of instruments to measure push-pull forces, lifting, cardiovascular responses, postural demands, in a real work setting. We call that content validity. You can do criterion validity and other type of validities, but I think the strongest validity you have is content. If they lift, they lift. If you can't lift, it's not. You just may not have the strength. It's not a disability, but you can't do an essential component of the job. And so that, instead of me trying to predict what's going to happen down the road, which I don't think meets the definition of what the EEOC wants. They want to see, if you didn't hire a person, is it because they pose immediate threat of harm? And if you keep that bar standard, you can't go wrong. So you say, I use a criterion validity study that this man is going to perform better than this man 10 years from now, and because of some kind of cutoff point, I'm not going to hire this man because he's not going to do as well as this man 10 years from now. You're not going to hold up in court, because the criterion is immediate threat of harm to oneself or to others. So we do we only use certified ergonomic specialists such as Lori Michello here in Alaska. She does a fantastic job. It's amazing. She takes off to the North Slope like it's nothing. And we focus only on those essential, not marginal requirements of jobs, but essential requirements of the job. And we try to give the employer some no-cost, low-cost feedback on some ergonomic ways to eliminate things that, for example, I might go in a warehouse and a guy says, we got and this is an actual case, we have to lift this thing called a little pair of stairs that's built into this box that weighs 150 pounds. We use 2 people and we grab it off the shelf at shoulder level, and they got to carry it 200 feet out to the pickup truck. I'm saying, first of all, why does it have to be at shoulder level? Secondly, why do you have to carry it? So of course what we did was store it at 30 inches above the floor and use a cart, a scissor lift cart that adjusts to the same height and roll it out. Oh yeah, we can do that. Okay, good. Because I'm not going to do a 175 pound or 150 pound test in my clinic, lifting over your shoulder. So anyway, so we address the stairs and the ladders they have to climb, and we look at one of the biggest things Lori mentioned is cardiovascular here. And when we get somebody in our clinic here that do a simple go up the stairs one time and their heart rate exceeds 85% of their safe maximum, what are they going to do in the real environment, in the cold? This is a heart attack waiting to happen. Now, what is a form of accommodation? You're aerobically deconditioned, sir or ma'am. Go ahead and get in better shape for this job. Come back and we'll retest you. have a retest policy set up. Yeah, you spend the money on a test and they didn't pass, and you say, well, that's money wasted. No, that's money saved. Tremendous amount of money saved. And if they come back, you retest them, and so on. You don't ever say, we don't ever see you again. That's discrimination. Okay?
Hey Rick, you mentioned the 85% being cardiovascular. It's like ironic that 85% of our air med, life med flights off of the North Slope for our operation, 85% are cardiovascular.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, it really is. And so we've seen dramatic reductions in these type of medevacs of people with cardiovascular. Offshore, that's the biggest reason for evacuations of cardiovascular. So we look for not only just, and look, if they are doing a lot of stuff, a lot of physical demands in our clinic, and they hit that 85%, we say, okay, look, we're probably not giving you enough rest time. In between a little rest time, sit down, recover, come back up, and if it keeps going above, then we have to make a decision. But we just don't do a knee-jerk reaction, hit 85%. Well, I might just have to do lift test, and I'll bring them right to the stairs, and forgot to give them a rest period between the two. Where in the real world, you're not usually rushed. Although if we err, we're going to err on the side of what? The employee. Because if you err in favor of the employee a little bit, you're going to be, EEOC is going to be happy. So we also, if they have to wear a respirator or a SCBA, all that, we ask employers to provide that to the clinics where we do the testing. Because, well, I found out firsthand. I did the firefighters test, put one of those respirators on, and had to go inside of a building with smoke in it and carry a 185-pound dummy or drag it out of the building. I was going, I couldn't get any air. And at my age, my heart was going, bow, bow, bow. I said, I think I'm out. You wouldn't want to hire me. I don't think I would last too long. So these things can range. Now, there are certain circumstances where the exertion will exceed 85% of the maximum safe heart rate for first responders and people wearing 50 pounds of PPE. And we got to make sure they're in top shape, and we will allow them to go past 85% as long as they don't have any other negative signs like dysrhythmias or really bad blood pressure changes. If we're testing somebody to go upstairs, we expect their top number of their blood pressures, the systolic, to go up, the bottom number to go down. But if your top number drops instead of goes up, we got a problem. All right? If your bottom number goes up 30, 40, 50, 60 millimeters of mercury rather than just up to 10, you got a problem. And so we have certain parameters that we're looking for that really indicate, like a triage, what defines a problem that we can identify. We also look at the effects of the environment. Does the work environment put you in a bent over position or make you have to crawl through an opening? So we want to make sure we simulate that if that's the case. And we want to eliminate excessive force, awkward postures, and repetition that's not truly required of the job as being essential through ergonomics. What are the essential push-pull requirements? I had somebody say, well, we want you to take over our fit to duty program. And I said, you don't need to do our PDVs, we already had it done. And I said, well, let me see your test criteria. And they said, well, you got to be able to push and pull with over 385 pounds of force. And I said, what do you generate 385 pounds of pull force on? He said, to tilt a 55-gallon drum of oil on a drilling rig. So I said, no, I've measured that a million times. There's no way it's that much. And I said, I'll demonstrate this. So I'll go out there on a drilling rig, I'll put my dynamometer on the 55-gallon drum, and just with a nice smooth movement, tilt it, put it onto the dollar. It was like 78 pounds of pull force. What was happening, whoever did the initial measurement was jerking on it. And so if you jerk real hard on something, it's going to generate a high force. Force is equal to mass times acceleration. And so the faster you're jerking on something, you can't stop somebody from doing that, but it's not the minimum essential requirement as Mark was referring to. And so we did all testing, for example, with Cisco. We did a lot of their ergonomics. We look at how high a person has to flex their hip. You say, well, that's not hard, Rick. What happens if they have a total hip replacement? They can't get their hip high enough. They're going to throw their back into this position. Somebody like Lori saying, that's not safe. So, they are not safe to do the minimum essential function of the job. Now, what does that trigger for you? That is going to be covered by ADA, and that means you do an accommodation review, like Cisco did. They lowered this, they had a put-down step up, so it accommodated the person who was going to be a driver. We're going to talk about interactive accommodation review in a second here. And that is the key to everything when it comes to protecting your company from any type of disparate discrimination lawsuit. You don't have to accommodate everybody if it creates undue hardship. And I'll define what that is in a second. Functional job description is a detailed report we talked about. It's going to have photographs of the actual work that's been approved by the company. We're going to name the items that are being handled, the dimensions, the distances. We're going to have that functional job description reviewed by your subject matter experts, your SMEs, which are people like yourselves, and people who do the work, and say, yeah. And then what we like to do is, okay, they approve the functional job description, we create your examination, and we say, let's put some of your representative incumbent employees. Give me some of your people that have been working for you for a long time here, that are 40 years and older, male and female, and give me some that are younger than 40, male and female. And let's run them through the test. We're not going to pass or fail them. That part of the test, that sheet will be removed. We want their feedback. Does this test truly represent the kind of physical demands they have to go through? And they sign a piece of paper and they say, yes, it does. Or they might say, on more occasions than once, it's not strenuous enough. You know, so you get some feedback, but very seldom when we do our jobs right with the functional job description, people go, yeah, that was a good exam. That really represents what I do, and if you can't pass that exam, you should be out there. And that's what you want to do. So you do an internal validation after you do the external validation by doing the PDB. Then we start the exam off, we customize your exam, and we start off with a physical examination. We look at the medical history. Remember, this is post-offer. I probably don't have to tell you that you can't inquire about any medical history or medical problems prior to an offer of hire, right? You know, the only way you can do a physical agility test before an offer of hire is you've got to make sure it's not medical. I just say, I want you, sir, to demonstrate that you can go up and down those stairs. I can't measure your heart rate, your blood pressure, or anything. That becomes a medical test. But I can see if you can go up and down the stairs, or if you can climb that vertical ladder. You know, but what you've lost is, if I can't do that, and your heart rate is becoming extremely irregular or going south, then we missed that whole medical problem because all we're doing is agility. That's why we think the post-offer gives you the most bang for your buck, and it's the only really way to go. So we do a good physical examination after we take a good medical history. The medical history kind of directs us to maybe to look harder at a back if they've had a prior back problem. We don't give the employer this medical information. This is maintained by WorkSafe or Beacon WorkSafe, confidential. We'll talk about that in a second. And then we do everything. We check the shoulders, the thoracic spine, the lumbar spine. We're going to push you through tests that normally a medical doctor would never do unless you came to that medical doctor with a specific medical problem. You say, I'm having pain, I'm having ridiculous pain down my leg, then they'll may do the straight leg raise test. We do it as a standard required part of our examination. And you say, well, how do you know if they can hide to something? You know, what if you like one time with compression on the spine, or I'll give you an example. One time I was doing a knee stress test on this guy, and he was tough enough not to tell me that it hurt like heck. But what he didn't realize, I had a heart rate monitor on it. And every time I did that valgus procedure in that knee, his heart rate jumped up. On the other knee, by comparison, did the same test, it didn't jump up. So I said, there's something wrong with this knee. And he said, no, there's nothing wrong with that knee. I said, okay, and I did a little bit harder. This time okay. And I said, well, so tell me what you did. And he said, well, get this, and this is a true story. I've got to strike me down dead if I'm lying. He says, I jumped off a bridge when I got drunk. I jumped off a bridge with a parachute flare. You know the flares with parachutes? He took 2 of them and jumped off the bridge. So I found out 2 things. He did this while he was drunk, and he's also very stupid. But what happened was he tore the anterior cruciate, the medial collateral ligament, and he was going to work for a company called Blessing Marine. Blessing Marine, when they found out our catch, he said, we had a case like this before. He said, as soon as he got on the barge, he grabbed his knee, and we paid over close to $400,000 by the time the litigation was over, because on the waterways, you're exposed to something called the Jones Act. And the Jones Act will take you, as you may, some of you already nodded, it can be quite costly with the Jones Act. Lawyers down in Louisiana and Texas, they fight over these Jones Act cases. They're so lucrative. So we do this examination, we take a good intake interview, we go over these things, we look at these things, we compare their verbal reports to their objective findings. A lot of times we'll bring them in and say, okay, we want you to get into your shorts or underwear, put this, if it was a woman, put this gown on, and someone will look at you. You know the ones that are trying to hide something immediately when they say, I've never had to do that before. Why do you need to do that? And they look like scared to death. I said, well, that's what we got to do for this examination. And so we end up getting things like this. This guy came in, this is the actual case. I don't know if you can see it, it's about a 3.5 inch classic lumbar laminectomy surgery scar. He denies he had back surgery. Remember, we're doing an examination and he took. I said, well, tell me, what was this scar for? He goes, get this, I fell off a horse onto a barbed wire fence. I said, well, that's the most symmetrical barbed wire fence scar I've ever seen. So we did an x-ray in his back, and of course his lumbar lamina had been removed, his spinous process removed. I told him, I said, the barbed wire went into your skin, went 3 inches below the muscle, tore that bone right off, just like a laminectomy. It's amazing similarity. Of course, and we didn't, the company, the law states that if a person lies in the examination, lies on the questionnaire, you immediately don't hire him. So he went away, probably found another place where they don't do this testing. So we do a lot of the, like I said, the special tests to look for, to see if we're, and another big part of this examination, we measure the baseline range of motion strength they have, just the same way it's done during the IME, the impairment rating test. So we're comparing apples to apples. Because if a person has some loss of range of motion, say in the neck, it may not cause a disability. If I played football, hurt my neck when I was in high school or college, and I can only go 45 degrees to the left, but true range is 80 degrees, but I'm a welder, I can weld with only 45 degrees of rotation. All I got to do is rotate my shoulder to compensate for it. So you have an impairment, an anatomical impairment, but you don't have an occupational disability. But if you don't record that, if WorkSaver, Beacon WorkSaver doesn't record that, and that guy or gal gets hurt on the job later on, and it becomes litigious or whatever, and a doctor does this examination for the plaintiff attorney, he says, oh, look, he lost 50% of his cervical range of motion because of this injury. We can pull out our evaluation form, that was pre-existing. Saves companies hundreds of thousands of dollars. Also, in some states, it helps qualify for a second injury fund, which is very important. So this is a guy who has rotator cuff injury. He didn't even know he had it. So not everybody's coming in. Look, person hiding something to get a job, I can understand that. I want the job. I'm not going to tell him about this injury. But some people don't even know they have the injury, and we find it. So we look at special tests where we put tremendous stress on, not stress, but we put tension on Forrest's body. Here I'm examining not only his back, but I'm examining the sciatic nerve that's going through the entire length of the leg. And then I put stress on the whole dural part of the spine to see if he's responding with pain. And if that heart rate monitor that was on his chest shows me an abnormal heart rate response. So component number 4, after we finish the complete physical exam, we do the functional capacity test. And we do the baseline thing, grip strength, push-pull, using equipment. We look at content validity, if they have to climb a vertical ladder, if they got to go through a hatchway. If a person's so big they can't get through this opening, we didn't fail them because they're obese. We failed them because they can't do a job-specific function. And that's important. Or if a person's heart rate goes really bad because he's obese or she's obese, well, it might be related to your obesity, but it's because of your heart rate, you need to get this, we would recommend to them, lose weight, get in shape. But you don't meet the job on the safety criteria. It's always come down to safety, immediate threat of harm. Can they do the job-specific function? Wearing PPE or any other thing. We're using wires and ropes and transfer nets and swinging in our rope. We eliminated a lot of people with shoulder problems who couldn't do that. And so these are all, this is why you see what you see in here. All this equipment and everything, a shovel pit and all these things. We do calibrated lifting with blind weights, so we know what they're lifting, they know, so we can look at their body mechanics, and we can look at they have a chart called a psychophysical chart, and they say, tell us how this feels to you, light, medium, heavy, very heavy, too heavy. Now, that's very reliable when they're giving you information correctly. Now, if they're struggling like that, they go, this is like, it doesn't correlate. So that's when we opt to go by their body mechanics rather than what they're saying. So we look at all the different kind of lifts: squat lifts, knuckle lifts, weight level lifts, shoulder level lifts, push-pull, carrying, as well the responses. Postural tolerance test, if they got to work bent over a lot, we test their ability to tolerate bending over while working. We test their abilities, not that this guy's got this huge surgical scar here and he's about 100 pounds overweight. That's certainly a red flag in my head as a clinician. I know that I can't say, oh, you're obese and you got this surgical scar from a liver surgery you had before. You don't look like you can do this job. I'm sorry. That's discrimination. Okay, so I've already made a self-perception that this person's disabled. If he can't do the job because of obesity, this is covered by the ADA. So you have to do an accommodation review. If you can't accommodate him by widening your hatchways and increasing the weight capacity of your ladders without any excessive expense, you don't have to hire him. But you want to go through that interactive accommodation review, which we provide the whole protocol to you. It's very simple to do. But it's a sit down, talk with a person who's a protected class, a person who's got a disability. You need to have that HR interaction. And let's just go through the steps and have a paper trail that we met, we discussed the accommodation, we found we could reasonably accommodate, so we did. We found that we couldn't reasonably accommodate. It created undue hardship. We didn't have any means to accommodate, and we did it. But you're not going to get penalized by EEOC for that.
Rick, go ahead. So if you have an employee that exceeds the weight of the ladder, isn't it an accommodation to say that the employee has to follow manufacturer's recommendations?
It is. What EEOC will look at is that a marginal job requirement or is that an essential job requirement? If it's essential, then they say, based on the resources of your company, is it reasonable to expect, one, that you replace the ladders with a higher capacity? Number two, is it reasonable that they could do the job without having to climb that ladder? If the answer is no to all those, that it's a burden that you couldn't do that, then you're in good shape. The worst that can happen is an administrative judge will review the case and disagree with your interpretation. But the courts, if you look at all the court cases, they all have favored the employer on these issues. As long as it's not ridiculous. And we had the Dow Corporation case where before they did fit for duty testing, 47% of all women were being hired. 40% of the workers were women. After they incorporated fit for duty testing, it went down to 15%. So a woman alleged that the fit for duty test was not a valid test. And sure enough, they went in and found that the heavy lifting they were doing did not represent the job. It was excessive for the job. And they got fined for discrimination against women. There were some other issues involved about how they treated women too, but that was kind of like the icing on the cake.
Hey, Rick, is obesity, is that a protected class?
It is. It's protected by ADA.
Wow.
Yeah, and that was recently about 2 years ago.
Curiosity then, so did Slim pass the test? Did he get the job?
No, he didn't. He failed on cardiovascular issues. And we did have one guy get stuck on this. We had to get help to get him out. He said, I don't think
That's a fail, right?
if you get kind of stuck in that, don't go all the way through. But he was determined, and he got jammed in there. He had a big muffin top on the top of it, and big muffins on the bottom of it. It was just hourglass in there. I'm not making fun of him, but it took a little while to get him out of there. But so when a test recipient is turned away for a medical issue, let's say we find that you got a back problem.